Hello viewers, I'm going to demonstrate how the square diagram functions on an 8x8 draft board. I have included the square diagram tutorial in the description so you can watch that video. Let's dive in. I started a game with c3 d4. I played c3 d4 and then my opponent responded with b6 c5. This is how you start using the square diagram. I made this move b2 c3. So let me explain why I played this move. So if you draw the square, the last move of my opponent piece at c5. So we draw the square diagram from c5. We see that the vertex here at c5 is surrounded by key squares here. All these squares are key squares surrounding the vertices. We have b6, d6, d4, b4, and the square here has b2 and then d2. These are key squares surrounding the vertices. If you take c3, c3 has control over all these key vertices we have here. So we move our piece to c3 so that we have control over these four key squares here. So the opponent played f6, g5, and then I responded with e3, f4. If we draw the square diagram, and the position at g5 is surrounded by f6, h6, h4, f4. I played e3, f4, taking this square here. We can also play a1, b2. I played this move to remove the piece at square c5. So we made this exchange. The move I made was g3, f4. So I made this move. Again, if we draw the square, so we see that the e5 here has d6, f6, f4, d4 surrounding it. If you come to e1, we have d2, f2 surrounding it, and then that of a1 we have b2. If you look at all the vertices here, so we have a piece at a1. When you come to e1, we have two squares here, that is d2 and then f2. If you move to e5, we don't have any piece on square d4 and then f4. So that is why I moved to take this square here. One of the things about the square diagram is that your position needs to balance. We don't have any piece here, so we need to move our piece to any of the squares here. You can also take square d4, but I decided to take square f4, preventing h6 from developing. So that's the reason I play g3, f4. The opponent responded with g7, f6. So he played this move and I responded with g1, f1. If we draw the square, the vertex here we have e3, g3, and then e1, g1. When you come to b2, we have a3, c3, c1, a1. If you look at the pieces surrounding the vertex at b2, we have four pieces surrounding, but we move to the vertex at f2, we have only two pieces on square e1 and then g1. So we need to move g1 to f2 so that we control the four squares here, just like we have the four pieces surrounding the vertex at b2. g1 need to move to f2 so that virtually we'll have control over the key squares we have here. That move was made. The opponent responded with f6, e5. That move was met with f2, g3. If we draw the square, with the vertex at e5, we have d4, f4, f6, d6 surrounding it. And that of e1, we have f2, d2 surrounding it. Now, with the 8x8 board, you don't have the opportunity to draw the double square, so we always use the single square. But those of you who have been following my tutorials on the square diagram will understand what I'm coming to do now. If you want to learn more about the square diagram, please watch the videos and then you get more understanding of how the square diagram works. With this particular move, we see that we have the key squares here, D4, F4, D2, F2. You can take E3. When we take E3, it controls these 4 squares here. These squares here will also form the center of the square if you are to draw another square. So these 4 key squares here, that is F4, H4, H2, and then F2, will form the key squares for the second square diagram. Just like we have B4, D4, D2, and then B2, forming the key squares for the vertices of the square at the center. The same thing applies here. So we can also take G3. So if you take G3, it's just like playing B2, C3. These moves are similar. If we move to C3, C3 has control over B4, D4, D2, and then B2. So controlling the inner squares surrounding the vertices. The same thing applies here. So this is the move I need you to understand. So if you move to G3, it's just like moving to C3. All right, that move was made by me. And then the opponent responded with H8, G7. And then I reply with D2, E3. If we depict the square diagram, we see that the key squares surrounding G3, the vertex at G3, we have F4, H4, H2, F2. And that of C3, we have B4, D4, D2, B2. We see that the center here, that is E3, has control over these 4 key squares here. It has control over D4, F4, F2, D2. That is why I took this position. I'll have control over the 4 key squares we have here. So I move D2 to E3. And then the opponent responded with G7, F6, G7, F6, and I moved to D4. I played E3, D4. Let me explain the move. My opponent played G7, F6. If you draw the square, the vertex at F2 is surrounded by E3, G3, G1, E1. And that of B2, we have C3, C1, A1, A3. The vertex at big 6 is surrounded by A7, C7, C5, A5. And that of F6, we have E7, G7, G5, E5. And then we see that the center of the square here has these 4 key squares. That is C5, E5, E3, and then C3. So we can take the center of the square so that we control all these 4 key squares here. That is why I made this move. We play this move, E3, D4. So this move was made. And then the opponent responded with B8, A7, B8, A7. And then I reply with C1, D1. I reply with C1, D1. Let me explain that move. Let's depict the square diagram. The vertex at A3, we have B4, B2, and that of E3, we have D4, F4, F2, D2. Now, the key move here is to move to square D2. So we take this square. I play this move, C1, D2. And then the opponent responded with A7, B6. I responded by playing D2, E3. Let's draw the square diagram from that position. The vertex at B2 is surrounded by A3, C3, C1, A1. And then that of F2, we have E3, G3, G1, E1. E3 is not occupied, so we can take E3. We can move our piece from D2 to E3, taking the key square E3. I move to E3, and then he exchanged the move, and then I move to d4. So I play d4. If we draw the square diagram, the vertex at c3 has b4, d4, d2, b2 surrounding it, and that of g3 we have f4, f2, h2, h3 surrounding it. I move the piece at e3 to d4. So we play this move, locking opponent position. So this move was played, and then he responded with c7, b6. If you draw the square, the vertex at b2 has a3, a1, c1, c3, and then we also have another vertex here, f2, surrounded by e3, g3, g1, e1. We can take any of the key squares here, but I decided to play a1, b2. So I played a1 to b2, and then he responded with b6, a5. I played a3, b4. So again, let me explain the position. So we see that the vertex at a5 is surrounded by b6, b4. I took b4 by playing a3, b4. In reply with d8, c7, I played b4, c5. If we draw the square, the vertex at c7 is surrounded by b8, d8, d6, b6, and that of c3 we have b4, d4, d2, b2. We see c5, so the c5 here has control over these 4 key squares. We move to c5, removing the piece at d6, and then black piece at d2 has no other option than to move to king, and then I saw that the future king can be killed by playing d4, c5. He moved to c1. I played d4, c5. d4, c5 was played. Now, if you draw the square diagram from the position, we see that the vertex at c5 here is surrounded by b6, d6, d4, b4. And then if we move to c5, we have control over the 4 key squares here. So we move to c5. He has to take with the king, and then we also take to h6, and I won the game. So that's how the square diagram works on an 8x8 draft board. Thank you very much for watching this video. See you in my next tutorial.